Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started. Hopefully you all can hear me, and I am currently sharing my screen, so I don't know if you can see me, but my name is Gabrielle Cantor. I am the chair of the Environmental and Climate Justice Committee here at the Arlington NAACP. We're very excited to have you all here. We've got a lot of really great speakers and presentations. I just wanted to share with you all that if you are a member of the NAACP, we welcome you to join our Environmental and Climate Justice Committee. You're also welcome to join our Housing Committee, and which this presentation sort of pertains to both of those realms. If you're not a member of the NAACP, we recommend that you also join us. And so to get started, we're just going to do a few sort of Zoom etiquette things. We're going to be recording this, so feel free if you need to turn off your camera, but you can also keep it on. It's up to you. Everybody should be joining on mute. And if you are not on mute, we ask that you stay on mute when you're not speaking. That way, if we have any background noise, it will not be distracting for our speakers. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end. So if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I will write them down as we get them so that we can ask them later in the session. The order of the speakers today will be after myself, Tim Dempsey, who is the Arlington Branch Housing Co-Chair and also an ECJ committee member who organized this entire event, is going to be starting us off. We're going to have Karen Camblin, who's the chair of the NAACP's Virginia State Conference ECJ committee. And then in the following order, our panelists are going to be Clark Gawker from Push Buffalo, Brett Jones from Evergreen Cooperatives, Cynthia Pinchback-Hines from Co-op Cynthy, Flacur Vera from Sustainergy, and Thomas Deyo from Montgomery County Green Bank. We're going to then have a question and answer session, and then have some final remarks to end by around 8:30. The final remarks will sort of coalesce some of our ideas and how they apply to Arlington. I'd also like to thank all our speakers. I'd like to thank them for joining us. We really appreciate your time. I think it's going to be a great panel. I'd like to also thank Karen, Julius, and also Wanda for all supporting us. And Tim, thank you for organizing this great event. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Karen. I'm going to just say also that for the speakers, I'm going to send you a chat at probably 2 minutes before your end time, just to sort of ping you that you're getting close to the end, just because I know myself, and I know I sometimes need a little reminder. So yeah, take it away, Karen.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for the invitation to speak with you all here tonight. Again, my name is Karen Camblin, and I'm the chair for the Virginia State Conference and NAACP Environmental and Climate Justice Committee. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the program and then conclude with some of the things that we're looking at on initiatives on a state level. So the Environmental and Climate Justice Committee was started about 11 years ago by our now director of the ECJ program on national, Jackie Patterson. And the purpose of it was to combat the ill effects of the coal industry. And as the program developed, Ms. Patterson identified the intersections of the health and the vitality of the Black community and the Black and Brown community was dependent on so many different other aspects. And since then, the program has expanded. It started out as a subcommittee in the Health Committee, and then it turned into a standalone committee. And it is now one of National's game changers. And what that means is National identifies certain issues that have significant impacts on the socio and economic advancement for the Black and Brown community. And that can include criminal justice reform, education, and environmental justice was added to that list at the annual conference in 2020. And since then, since its inception, there have been a lot of different reports in which has been produced by the Environmental and Climate Justice Program, such as looking at just energy transitions and how to phase out toxic energies, such as coal and nuclear and oil facilities, and bring clean energy into Black and Brown communities. Or lights out in the cold, which was reforming utility shutoff policies and declaring utilities as a human right. And through the COVID pandemic, we've realized how important that is. And National has re-engaged that as a top priority of the elimination of utility disconnections. And then there's also the In the Eye of the Storm, which is a guide of transforming crisis and advancing equity during disasters. And this was as a result of what happened as a result of Hurricane Katrina. And this helps frontline communities and marginalized communities work with their local municipalities and localities before disaster happens in order to prepare for disaster, becoming first responders, being at the table when they're planning all of the different emergency route plan and such. And so inequity comes in so many different ways, and it's not by accident. Most of the inequities that we're seeing is systemic and is done by design. It's done by design to prevent the advancement of the Black and Brown community. And so as part of the program, we use a equity lens and in order to ensure that the program or whatever we're looking at it includes everyone and brings everyone to the table. And so one of the ways in which we look at it is the governance or the procedural equity of what's going on. So who's at the table, who's making the decisions, and making sure that it's a diverse array, not just within race, but also age, so economic status, and all of those different types of things. A second equity lens that we use whenever we're evaluating our programs is how are resources and investments being allocated? Is it falling under something of a NIMBY, not in my backyard, where it's, yeah, we need it, but I don't want this development by me. So, put it in an area that's concentrated by low wealth or Black and Brown populations. How funded are the schools? Because we know that impacts education and academic careers. And what is the proximity to toxic uses? So we look at how resources are being allocated, where the good investments are being made, and where the toxic investments are placed. And then, of course, what are the equitable outcomes? So as we're planning all of these different things, who's going to be impacted, who is resilient, and who will survive? Let's take Hurricane Katrina, for instance, in which they identified how the resources were going to be allocated, deferring funding from doing stormwater management improvements in wards that were high concentration of minorities, populations. And we saw who was impacted and what communities took a longer time to become, bounce back from what had happened, who experienced the most damage. So what we try to do is make all of our policies and programs intentional and transformative. And it can be as simple as doing a community garden in an area that is in the middle of a food desert, to making sure that our process and programs includes everybody at the table. So as I said, inequity happens, it's not by accident, but as a result of a system design. And so I'm kind of going to move it over towards the management, building sector industry. And just in 2018, National was actually looking at building a headquarters that would serve as a demonstration project on what green building should be and how it can be and improve and incorporate into our daily lives. And as they were looking at the building sector, they realized how much inequity and disparity was in the building sector, whether it's academia, who's going through the STEAM programs, whether it's infrastructure, who has programs that have energy efficiency and protects them from climate change disasters, as well as business, what businesses, what small business have opportunities to be a part of the green building sector. And they realized that there was too much disparity. So they kind of stepped back and said, we needed to build a program that focuses and looks at this, evaluates it, and comes up with solutions and recommendations. And that's how the Center in Equity in the Building Sector was developed. And it functions on several key principles, including human rights, such as ensuring healthy and safe housing, ensuring representation in the green building movement, ensuring that local knowledge is upheld and promoted with the same regard as quantitative data, and making sure that people understand that local source of information is vital and very important in the development and implementation of any development program or strategy that's being recommended for a community, as well as recognition of lived experience, and acknowledgement of an investment to remedy past, present, and future injustices for the frontline communities struggling against structural oppression. With communities that are at risk, we recommend that, with overdevelopment, displacement, and environmental justice, one of the first priorities should include stabilizing policies and investments, such as effective rights and resources to anchor the existing residents' interests from development changes. Some other things that can be incorporated in development strategies, including ensuring during procurement processes that it is written in the RFP of wanting and expressing the need to have diverse service providers as the development project, or policies for residents and businesses to include just cause eviction policies, as simple as that, or ensuring that evictions only happen with good reason and rarely. And there are other things such as rent stabilization to limit landlords' ability to increase rents due to the development that's being brought into the area. And there's so many other tools to ensure that the existing housing, as well as the framework and the backbone of the community, is maintained for the existing residents. So National has decided on, instead of building their own, they wanted to practice what they preach. So what I was saying, everything has to be intentional, with a purpose, and transformative. And they identified a location called the Reef Center on the corner of 14th and U Street in Northwest DC. And they chose that community to go in and help to renovate the existing center to help revitalize that community. That area was known as the Black Broadway in DC. It had over 300 businesses of wide array. And it was a center that was named for, named after a civil rights attorney, Frank D. Reeves, and it was commissioned by the late Marion Barry Jr., the mayor of DC, and to serve as a center hub for the community. So NAACP wanted to have that intentional transformative approach in revitalizing and protecting the history of that community. And so that's what they did. And they also developed an equity RFP in collaboration with Washington, DC, to make sure that the communities the businesses that were working on that project were people or were communities from socially disadvantaged populations. And so that is a great example of intentionality. It's a great example of transforming things. And it's a great example of maintaining and protecting the existing residents. So what is it that we're doing here in Virginia? There are a lot of different programs that are going on, as you know. There are, proposals for casinos throughout the state, as well as carbon pricing programs that are supposed to develop or generate revenue to help combat certain ill effects from the transportation sector in hopes of using those revenues to try and help and build and more infrastructure, transportation infrastructure in Virginia. So the actions of the Virginia State Conference Committee is making sure that we are at the table when each of these policies and programs are being developed, in order to make sure that those equity considerations are hardwired into the program and not an afterthought, and making sure that we have not only the local residents being at the table, but also that all of the small and minority owned business have a competitive, are being able to be competitive during the procurement process. So we're looking at some really large programs, such as the Transportation and Climate Initiative. That is, that's the transportation sector one. There's also a pay-as-you-go on-bill tariff that electric cooperatives are doing. So we're in communications of that, making sure that that is an equitable approach. And then we're working with various units around the Commonwealth who are trying to make sure that any of their large development programs that are currently going on are included that equity lens that I went over in a very bird's eye view, so to speak. So I don't know how I'm doing on time, but a
little bit over, but it's all right.
And, and I kept looking for your message.
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
I got distracted. I apologize.
Oh. Okay. Well, then in that case, that concludes my presentation. And I look forward to the question and answer session.
Great. Thanks, Karen. I apologize for not giving you that reminder there.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. It's kind of our fault because we got started a little bit later because we had some technical difficulties. But yeah, thank you so much. It was a great actual overview and introduction to the work that we're doing here at ECJ. And I think try to seg this into the panel itself. So hi everyone, my name is Tim Dempsey. I'm the co-chair of the NAACP Arlington Branch Housing Committee and member of the ECJ committee. And I wanted to provide some very brief introductory remarks for the panel discussion. Tonight was born out of a conversation we're having at our local ECJ committee a few months ago. We were discussing the disparate issues of racial justice, equity, energy, housing, and jobs in the green economy, and how all these things intersect. Or more to the point, we discussed what we could do and should do here in Arlington, Virginia as a whole to try to address these in a comprehensive manner. And I can say that from following the newsletters of groups like New Economy Coalition and Democracy Collaborative, I knew there were organizations in other communities already trying to meet this challenge in one way or the other. So I undertook to reach out to a few of these organizations that are showing, in my opinion, a possible path to a new economy and a model of what this just and equitable transition might look like. In addition to the work of the organizations we're going to be highlighting tonight, we also wanted to start a conversation on the financing side of things, since the Virginia legislature just authorized localities to set up green banks and to help finance green infrastructure, which we think could help fund certain aspects of a just transition in Arlington County if the county board chooses to pursue that. And so we invited a head of an existing green bank across the state line in Maryland. So just once again, the panelists tonight, we will have Brett Jones from Evergreen Cooperatives, Clark Gawker from Push Buffalo, Cynthia Pinchback-Hines from Co-op Cincy, Flecker Vera from Sustainergy, and Thomas Deo from Montgomery County Green Bank, Maryland. So I'll provide a full bio for each of them individually before they speak. And I guess without further ado, I will just go ahead and introduce Clark, who will be speaking first. Clark Gawker grew up in the town of Brighton, inner ring suburb of Rochester, New York. He holds an undergraduate and graduate degrees in sociology from SUNY Geneseo and the University of Buffalo, respectively. He spent nearly 5 years working in residential construction as a carpenter. Clark joined the staff of Push Buffalo in 2009 to lead a net zero energy demonstration and green jobs training project with youth from the community. In 2012, he helped launched Push Buffalo or Push Green, a community-based energy efficiency and renewable energy program with Push Buffalo. In his current job as Director of Policy and Strategy, Clark works with Push Green staff, the organizing team, and coalition allies to advocate for a just transition for frontline communities from racial capitalism and the extractive fossil fuel-based economy. He currently represents Push on the New York Energy Democracy Alliance Steering Committee, and is co-chair of both the EDA Policy and Intersectionality Working Group and New York Renews Policy Committee. In summer of 2020, Clark was appointed to serve on the New York Climate Action Council's Energy Efficiency and Housing Advisory Panel. So I will now mute myself and let Clark take it away.
Hey, awesome. Hey, thanks so much, Tim and Karen. So much of what you said resonated, I think, with what I'll share this evening. And thanks to the chapter for the invitation to be with you tonight. Also, that bio was pretty long. Next time I'll give you something a little shorter. But yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here. So I'm Clark Gawker. I'm the Director of Policy and Strategy at Push Buffalo. I use he, him pronouns. PUSH stands for People United for Sustainable Housing. We are a 15-year-old member-based and base-building organization located in Buffalo, New York. Most of our organizing and place-based development work occurs in a multiracial, multi-ethnic, poor and working class community that's very much in transition. In the last 10 years in Buffalo, there's been kind of a surge of public economic development investment that has spurred a lot of private development activity that's created some troubling development patterns that I'm sure are familiar to a lot of folks on the call tonight. And our community, our neighborhood in which we do our organizing and development work in is kind of ground zero for a lot of the real estate speculation, the land appreciation, and a lot of the displacement pressures. So I think tonight I'll share some, I'll introduce and share some perspective on our place-based development model, which itself is embedded in a lot of different work that happens really at every level, the neighborhood level, city, state, federal level. I'll just say briefly, in addition to our affiliation at the New York State level with a couple powerful coalitions, the New York Energy Democracy Alliance and the New York Renews Coalition, we're also affiliates of People's Action and the Climate Justice Alliance at the national level. And I think we proudly share space with the NAACP and the Climate Justice Alliance. So yeah, PUSH, our mission is to mobilize residents to create strong neighborhoods with quality, affordable housing, to expand local hiring opportunities, and to advance economic and environmental justice in Buffalo. Next slide. And so probably about, 4 years ago, we kind of, through our participation in CJA and the New Economy Coalition, became aware of a really powerful kind of theoretical, but also very practical framework for thinking about what a just transition in frontline communities should and could look like. And so the graphic here, which for me, it's not loading quite right, but I'll just kind of note the source. It's Movement Generation. Folks may be familiar with them. They're kind of a national movement intermediary and support organization based in the Bay Area. They worked with CJA members nationally to develop this framework, which really in a pretty concise way depicts the kind of existing system of advanced racial capitalism that exists in this country, how it operates to concentrate wealth and power in the 1%, how it does so through a worldview that really valorizes individualism and consumerism and a colonial mindset, how it looks to really kind of pillage and squander resources from the natural environment and leave all kinds of pollution and sacrifice zones in its wake, and relies on a governance system and institutions that often resort, in the first instance, and if not the last instance, resort to force and militaristic tactics to keep order in society. And so the framework then kind of reveals like what it could look like to transition to a regenerative living economy, one that centers cooperation in our labor relations, one that values sacredness and caring in our kind of ideologies and worldview, one that looks at resource regeneration as the departure from resource extraction, and one that really relies on deep forms of democracy at the local level to drive our decision making and to really transform quality of life. Next slide. So yeah, about 4 years ago, Push really embraced this transition framework and have used it to kind of make sense of the work we had been doing on the west side of Buffalo for so many years. So where's that work begin? It really begins with our people. As I mentioned, we're a base building organization. We're a member-based organization working in an incredibly diverse community. The west side of Buffalo is, for the last 5 or 6 years, has been a refugee resettlement community. In Buffalo, we've had well over 10,000 refugees resettle in the city in several different neighborhoods. And again, there's been a high concentration of refugee resettlement on the west side. So this here is just a picture from the People's Climate March back in 2014 in New York City. We sent a couple busloads of our members down and just joined, several hundreds of thousands of people in the streets in New York. Next slide. So in terms of our place-based work, really from the top down, the majority of our board of directors are folks of color, poor folks who live on the west side of Buffalo. Our staff is incredibly diverse, and our membership is as well. And so, these are, images of a few past and current members and staff who have really helped to drive our work. I'll just focus on one in the left corner there, Terry Richard, former board president, lives on the corner of 18th Street and Massachusetts Avenue in the heart of our neighborhood. And she's really just been a champion for the community since she moved in. She's not from Buffalo, she's from Brooklyn, moved up here with her family several years ago looking for new opportunity. And just to give you a sense of how we really rely on the brilliance and leadership of our members, back in around 2010, we launched a campaign to win reinvestment in a city-owned park that had fallen into disrepair and was dangerous and unsafe and just became a blight and an eyesore on the neighborhood. And it was a pretty substantial park right in the middle of the neighborhood. And Terry really led a resident-led effort to put pressure on the city to expose the city's control of federal community development block grant funds that could be used, and in fact were designated for use to rehabilitate public park space across the city. And through direct action, through lobbying, through other pressure tactics, we were able to win reinvestment in the park on the back of a community-driven planning process that Terry helped to lead. And so today, the park that exists in the community, I think is I think a testament to the leadership that Terry and so many others exhibited. And we wound up with new soccer fields in the park, new basketball courts, a playground that was relocated from adjacent to a kind of busy street that ran through the center of the neighborhood to further back in the park, a new park pavilion, a new handball court. So I think there's countless stories like that, and I can delve into some more maybe during the Q&A. Next slide. So this is kind of the crucible for a lot of our work, and really we're kind of a think and do organization. Since our founding, we've set out to control land in the neighborhood, knowing that that would be the best defense against displacement pressures, gentrification, other undue forces. And so since that time, we've been able to purchase or acquire well over 100 parcels of land in this 30 block area of the west side that, again, through a community planning process, we designated a green development zone. with those parcels, we've done everything from affordable housing development, leveraging state low-income housing tax credit allocations and other state, local, and federal affordable housing programs, where now we own and manage over 100 units of green affordable rental housing in that district. We've repurposed vacant lots for both passive and active uses, as well as some green infrastructure interventions, which I think we'll see in a few minutes in some future slides. We've used houses that, some of the houses in our portfolio that maybe didn't quite fit in larger development projects, we've kind of pulled out, done some separate fundraising around, and have used those as hands-on job training sites, and I'll get into that a little bit more. And so really, we think that, this green development zone strategy can be one that, other communities that are similarly situated. This isn't a one-size-fits-all model by any means. Again, a city like Buffalo, suffering from decades of disinvestment and deindustrialization, racial segregation, redlining, other forces, I think made it so that an organization like ours 15 years ago could aspire to own and control land in a community like this. Next slide. So, in line with our mission, one of our focuses since I've been with the organization and since 2009 has been creating green jobs. So as I mentioned, we've done that by leveraging some of our smaller affordable housing development projects. One of those projects, I think, was mentioned in the brief bio that Tim read off. It was a net zero energy demonstration project, a small single family 1,200 square foot home that we worked with the community to push a net zero energy concept. And while doing that, also wanted to partner with a local youth build program and some of the building trades union apprenticeship programs to really seize on some of the hands-on training opportunities that would be possible through that kind of project. So that was my kind of entry point into Push. I came on with that background in residential construction to help lead that project. We ended up installing a horizontal ground loop geothermal system, a 4.5 kilowatt rooftop solar system. Worked with over 100 trainees on the project. We had apprentices from the plumbers and pipe fitters union, the operating engineers, the painters and finishers, and we had several cohorts of youth build members come through the house over a 2-year period of time. We've also, for our larger light tech projects, we want to hold ourselves to the highest standards possible as a property developer, and so we work with the community to develop kind of project specific workforce standards, and then we apply those to ourselves, and they trickle down to the general contractor and the subcontractors on the project. So the image in the lower right, our biggest project to date, although we're breaking ground on a bigger one this fall, was our School 77 conversion. And that saw us rehab a former Buffalo Public School elementary school building into 30 units of green affordable rental housing for seniors in the community, as well as office space for Push, a black box theater for a local theater collective, and space for another nonprofit that kind of focuses on after school youth programming. And so the picture here is a 64 kilowatt community solar rooftop array being installed by a crew of 6 men and women from the neighborhood who were hired by the solar installer to install this system. And that happened, I think, through that kind of procurement lever that Karen had mentioned that we required when we put that project out to bid. Next slide. And just looking at time, I think Q&A, we can kind of dig into some of the stuff. So really quickly, these are just a couple examples of before and after of some of our affordable housing projects. Next slide. These are a couple of those hands-on job training projects. The one at the bottom is the net zero concept. And so You can see the before and after there with, I think, a picture of the solar thermal kind of hot water system on the roof. Next slide. You know, some of our work is very much helps to drive and is driven by you know, the kind of the policy levers and some of the, you know, regulatory requirements that in this case the city has found itself in. And so, like a lot of Rust Belt cities, Buffalo is under a consent decree with the EPA to remediate its combined stormwater and sanitary sewer system. And so we took that as an opportunity as the city was making commitments to invest in green infrastructure solutions to really practice in the green development zone a variety of green infrastructure interventions, and they're kind of listed here. Next slide. And these are just some pictures: permeable pavers, community gardens, you know, other kind of stormwater management features. Next slide. That's just a picture of the School 77 building after it was completed. Next slide. Again, a picture of the roof solar install. Next slide. Also kind of a mezzanine roof at School 77. So that's a rain garden on the roof there. And it's just space for tenant use only, so they can come out and hang out on that rooftop. Next slide. And this just, you know, I think summarizes some of the impacts we've had, you know, over this 12-year period that's represented here. So $62 million invested in green affordable housing. We also run a community-based weatherization program where we've weatherized over 1,000 homes, not just in that 30-block area, but in other low and moderate income neighborhoods across Buffalo. You know, some of the job creation statistics, the greenhouse gas emission reduction numbers. So yeah, that's, again, a snapshot of the story. I probably did a clumsy job of getting through it, but yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Thanks so much, everybody.
Oh, thank you so much, Clark. That was a great presentation. You know, we love the work you're doing there, and I'm sorry that I mean, all the speakers here tonight, I wish we should probably be giving you all about, you know, half hour at least to kind of present, because you guys are all doing such amazing work. But yeah, if we will have, I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions for you in the Q&A session. So I'd like to move on to our next speaker. We have Brett Jones. Brett Jones is the Executive Vice President at Evergreen Cooperatives. Brett joined the Evergreen team in 2013, working for Evergreen Business Services as the Director of Strategic Projects. In 2016, he served as the interim president of Evergreen Energy Solutions and returned to EBS in 2017. Brett is focused on the growth and development of the Evergreen Cooperatives Fund for Employee Ownership, which provides low-cost, flexible capital to help retiring business owners sell their businesses to their employees. When not helping companies convert to an employee-owned structure, he is leading other cities through the adaptation of Evergreen's anchor institution-based model of economic inclusion and community wealth building. Fulbright Fellow, Brett is a graduate of the Ohio State University and holds an MBA from DeVry University's Keller Graduate School of Management. In his own words, it's very rewarding to come to work every day knowing that what we do here at Evergreen changes lives and creates opportunities for those that need them most. This is the most satisfying work I have ever done. And so without further ado, I will mute.
Hi, I hope everyone can hear me. I think that bio about sums it all up for the evening. I think I could just leave everything to Q&A, but so, you know, at Evergreen, we're really focused on economic justice and creating community wealth building opportunities for the residents in our target neighborhoods. And our mission really is to transform lives in neighborhoods. It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. The goal tonight is going to be able to just to walk you through a couple of aspects of what we're doing at Evergreen to really help you understand that what we do and how we do it really should be regarded as a tool for your tool belt, and the methodology should be that as such. And so we believe that, employee ownership is really, and worker cooperatives specifically, they are the intersection of, policy, investments, and practice. We began in our sort of 1.0 model with the Cleveland Foundation leading an effort to really understand why there was an economic emergency in the neighborhoods that were contiguous to our anchor institutions. And those communities had a median household income of about $18,500, and backed up to anchor institutions like the Cleveland Clinic, Case Western Reserve University, and university hospitals, who are billion-dollar institutions. The idea was, how do we sort of close the wealth gap and close the income gap? And so we call this our 1.0 model. And in our 1.0 model, we did specifically that. We partnered with the anchor institutions to shift their spend to worker-owned companies located in these communities that are called the Greater University Circle. As in many cities, these neighborhoods are, majority, certainly low to moderate income, but really Black people. And so it was an interesting effort early on, about 10 years ago. So we kicked off about 2009. And so it was then that these anchor institutions and the Cleveland Foundation really came together to try to figure out how to solve the wealth gap there. And so they formed the worker cooperatives. The first one was Evergreen Cooperative Laundry, which processes healthcare linen for our major healthcare institutions in town. They employ about 175 people there as employee owners. Our second company was Evergreen Energy Solutions, which is a energy efficiency and renewable energy company, and it employs about 15 to 20 electricians that were focused on building a 1 megawatt solar system or retrofitting over 10,000 LED lighting fixtures in the healthcare space. And then Green City Growers, which employs about 50 people and grows about 300,000 heads of lettuce a month, and several thousand pounds of herbs. And so the shift in this anchor spend really was, it was about a $3 billion spend that they had outside the region. They shifted it to the region, to these worker-owned companies located in these low to moderate income communities, and hiring people from these communities. What happens, right? You profit share, right? So each one of the worker cooperatives are for-profit entities, and the folks there earn not only a living wage, but they also earn a share in the profits each, but they take home all of the profits. And so, for instance, the Cleveland Clinic wanted us to increase our pay rate. This was several years ago. They wanted us to increase our pay rate from $9 an hour to $12 an hour. And we reminded them that was going to be reflected in their cost of doing business, right, and the processing rate. And as an institutional partner and an anchor partner, they agreed to it, and not only agreed to it, but insisted on it. And so they realized, as anchor institutions in this 1.0 model for us, that their spend can have an impact on local lives. And as an example, again, Evergreen Cooperative Laundry shared just shy of $1 million in profits last year amongst around 80, 90 employee owners. And so it's an impact model that, again, as we talk about how to actually get things done here, and certainly appreciating all the ways to get things done, we're really enamored with our model. We believe, in fact, that if you're hungry, it's hard to hear any other messages. And so we're focused on solving that hunger issue. We're really focused on creating some wealth building opportunities so that folks can begin to listen to other messages related to food justice and criminal justice and racial justice. So that's our 1.0 strategy. It's partnering with anchor institutions to shift their spend to employee-owned companies and low to moderate income communities. Our 2.0 strategy came about because our early goal was to have 1,000 employee owners over 10 companies in 10 years. And about 8 years in, we realized that we were going to fall short of that goal, and decided to figure out how to get there faster. We were a part of a roundtable in San Francisco where we talked about quality jobs, and everyone in the roundtable was talking about quality jobs for frontline workers who were not at the roundtable. And when it became my turn to talk, that was just an interesting aspect. And we said, look, we actually give the employees the say, right? They are the stakeholders, and so they determine what quality jobs are. And in that effort, we also realized that there were a lot of retiring baby boomers. And so in partnership with the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco, we were able to begin what is the Fund for Employee Ownership, and that's our 2.0 strategy. And what we do there is really interesting. And as we talk about economic justice, right? We really see our efforts as a rising tide that lifts all ships. And so what we do in the Fund for Employee Ownership is we acquire businesses, convert them to employee owned, and then support them in the Evergreen network. And I like to spend most of the time, really talking about that model because, whether it's Arlington or any other community, working on creating advantage or just creating equity, right, for disadvantaged communities, this tool really helps you get there, right? You can take public and private dollars, and you can use those dollars to acquire these companies, which are often owned by baby boomers who are retiring, don't have a succession plan, don't have a transition strategy, and thus will often just close. And that closure dislocates the workers, which we're most concerned about. It doesn't really give the owner the full wealth that he built in that building because he's just liquidating assets at that point. And then it also erodes the tax base for the local economy. And so with our Fund for Employee Ownership and this strategy of not only keeping the businesses that are in the community, but then also turning them to employee owned, ultimately what you're doing is you're creating more wealth in the community, and those folks that live in the community will circulate the dollars in the community. So it has this multiplying effect, but it's really around our strategy today was and always will be employee ownership as the way to sort of really create economic justice and start to build community wealth, and then using these dollars to acquire existing companies. And oftentimes, so our first companies were very focused on, place-based strategies, and therefore you tour those companies, and they're predominantly Black workers. This 2.0 strategy is a little bit different because, again, it's going to be the tide that lifts all ships. When we buy a company, we do have a scorecard that allows us to rate the impact of the investment for us. And there's several impact areas, and certainly, the diversity of the frontline workforce is an important metric for us. And so two deals that are looking exactly the same, if one has more impact in the diverse workforce, then that's the investment that we're going to make, because that's really what we're founded on, is really is this notion of wealth building for very specific or very disadvantaged populations. And so we raised a few dollars. We, in early 2020, February 2020, we acquired Berry Insulation, which is a home renovation sort of company. They insulate homes and commercial buildings, converted them to employee owned, and then the pandemic hit, so that was very scary. A little bit later in the year, in 2020, around August, we made another investment in Berry Insulation, and they acquired their competitor called Artec. It gave them a new sales territory. It gave them a new technical capability around foam insulation and not just the cellulose. In November of 2020, we made an investment in Phoenix Coffee, which is a local coffee chain, about 5 or 6 locations. And again, so this is in 2020, during the pandemic, we're investing in employee ownership and food and beverage, right? Companies and employee ownership. So it's risky, but that's what we're designed to do. I mean, the work is risky. The efforts have to be risky if you want to get good results. And so Phoenix Coffee, Artec, and Berry Insulation have all done well. And then a few Fridays ago, we invested in our first manufacturing company. So we've now, if you think about it, we're in textiles with the laundry. We're in, energy and electricity with Evergreen Energy Solutions and Berry. We're in food with Green City Growers. We're in quick service retail with Phoenix, and now we're in manufacturing with a company called Untitled. And so, as we acquire these companies, the workforce is diverse. The money stays in the community, and ultimately, builds that community wealth. And so, now we're at about 350 employees in our portfolio of companies. And, so the important thing here is to realize how employee ownership is a tool for you, and really how worker cooperatives as a particular business structure can help really community wealth.
Great, thank you so much, Brett. That was an amazing presentation. I've been following Evergreen for quite a while, and it's just been really amazing over the years to see you guys continue to grow and thrive, and really provide just a really amazing model. And I think we'll also have some good questions for you when we get to Q&A. I wanted to now kind of make the transition to our next panelist. There's really kind of a set of panelists. We will have Cynthia and Flecker present, and they are working within an organization that's doing very similar kind of co-op development, slightly different approach. And I wanted to introduce Cynthia first. Cynthia is a racial justice educator and co-op developer for Co-op Cincy in Cincinnati, Ohio, where she coordinates and facilitates Power in Numbers Black Co-op University, an intensive training experience for Black-owned cooperatives. She has a professional career spanning 4 decades and has provided leadership to corporations, universities, and public schools, and striving to improve organizational effectiveness. She holds a PhD in higher education leadership and has taught at Virginia State University, Delaware State University, Northern Kentucky University, where she served as Associate Dean of African American Affairs and Ethnic Services, providing academic, cultural, and social support to African American students. She led human resource development and diversity efforts at General Motors in Flint, Cognis Corporation in Cincinnati. Cynthia has served also as a community activist and organizer, campaign manager, educator, organizational development consultant, diversity leader, entrepreneur, reentry trainer, and board member to several nonprofits, including Co-op Cincy since its inception, and the NAACP, for which she held the positions of membership chair in Flint and Freedom Fund chair in Westchester, Ohio. The Cincinnati Enquirer named her one of the 10 most influential educators in Cincinnati and presented her with a Diversity Leadership Award. She's a native of Danville, Virginia, and she resides now with her family in Westchester, Ohio. So Cynthia.
Okay, Tim, thanks. Thanks, I really appreciate that. That's a long intro, so I agree. I'm gonna need to shorten that a little bit. It's good to be here with everyone. Tim, I'm gonna ask if you would share, can I share the screen? It says here that the host disabled participant screening. Is it possible for me to share?
Oh, Gabrielle, do you?
Okay. If not,
you should be good to share now.
okay. All right.
If there's a shared screen at the bottom.
Okay. Yeah. All righty. Well, would you like to go ahead and introduce Flecker right now too, because we're going to tag team.
Sure thing. Yeah, I'll do that. So presenting with Cynthia is Flecker Vieira, who is the CEO of a cooperative organization within a Co-op Cincy. Flecker is a longtime community economic development and sustainable energy advocate, entrepreneur, as well as an immigrant and worker rights organizer. His passion stemmed from his experience of being a former undocumented immigrant, having grown up in a small family business and growing up in a country severely affected by climate change. He also worked on other social justice issues, including workers' rights, supporting triple bottom line businesses, as well as being politically active and supporting the creation of community and economy support policies on a local and national level, such as the property assessed clean energy and comprehensive immigration reform. Flecker was also key in creating the Co-op Cincy's partnership with Mondragon Corporation in Spain. He has supported the creation of other union co-ops, as well as being currently the CEO and founder of Sustainable Cooperative, which is a worker-owned business in the energy efficiency and solar industry. Flecker also serves in the loan committee of Shared Capital Cooperative that provides funding for cooperative businesses. Flecker is originally from Lima, Peru, and in his free time, he loves to travel, dance, volunteer in the community, and spend time with his family.
Sí, Manuel, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be part of this event. Yeah, so I'm Flecker Vera. I'm from Lima. I'm a blue collar worker, green construction worker, and I work in a lot of warehousing, restaurants, construction. And what I learned doing that for like 10 years that in general, workers are not valued for the work that we do. Went to school, got a degree in finance, and wanted to create some type of business model that was different, that created, full value in the workers. Learn about in 2010 after the recession, learn about Mondragon, the largest networking and worker-owned business in the world, making this agreement with the steelworkers, one of the largest unions in the continent, to create this business model that can create an economy that works for all. People in Cincinnati saw an opportunity in there. A bunch of community organizers like me got together and see how we can capitalize on this opportunity and use, the resources that labor offers, using organized labor, using their connections to be able to create a new economy. So that's how we created Co-op Cincy. It used to be called back then Cincinnati Union Co-op Initiative. And that was in 2010. And what we do in Co-op Cincy, we focus in creating ownership mainly in people of color. We partner with individuals, nonprofits, organizations to create family-owned jobs through the creation of networks of worker-owned businesses, or this under the Mondragon model. We really believe that for our model, having organized labor as part of it allow us to expand the model. There are several incubators across the country under this concept or this agreement between the Steelworkers Union and Mondragon. There is one in Dayton. We're just one of them in Cincinnati. There's also an initiative being created in Illinois, Carbondale, Illinois, and so forth. So the idea is that these incubators will, under this concept, will incubate their own businesses. In our model, the businesses, the worker-owned businesses, the co-ops, we put 10% of our net income into the incubator to be used as seed capital, be able to sustain the incubator to create more jobs, and those type of things. So with that, Cynthia is gonna be able to speak more in depth about how we try to build this new economy through Co-op Cincy, going over our strategies, and I think I'm gonna wrap up more up with more in-depth description on my co-op. Cynthia?
Okay, thanks. Now, I will tell you that I will be brief. I have just a few things to share with you, just as Blecker mentioned, but one of the things I wanted to say is that it's been a while, but I believe I've met Brett, and this was a while back when I started with Co-op Cincy as a board member. Evergreen was one of the places that I first visited, to see what was going on. I didn't understand what co-ops were about then, but I've since learned a lot. So it's good to hear of all the progress that you're making there. Okay, so the Cincinnati Union Co-op Network is comprised of 8 co-op organizations, co-ops and organizations. And we also have a loan fund. We also have what's called Co-op U, which is our training that is provided to any of our emerging co-ops. So it's usually an experience that involves anywhere from 12 to 14 weeks of very intense training. Everything from understand what a co-op is to governance. We do finances, the whole experience for what it takes to start a co-op. And our network also involves transitions programs as well. So as you can see, our services, again, transitions, co-op education, which would be the Co-op U, support beyond the co-op training experience. And once, of course, the co-ops have been set up as businesses, and we have the loan fund for support. And some of the co-ops that we have already established, as you see here, would be a Cincy Cleaning Co-op. We have Apple Street Market, our Harvest, Sustainergy, which Flecker is Director, CEO of, Care Share, which is a daycare co-op. We also have renting partnerships, one that's called the Bhutanese Bari, and we have TLC, which is a home healthcare co-op. And the last one you see here is the Queen City Commons. So we have three different strategies that we focus on, with our co-ops. One is support and launch of the new co-op businesses. Again, Co-op U, the education part, this is very important, the one-on-one technical assistance. We do have a large network of individuals that we call on for support. And again, the loan co-op, as I mentioned here, you will see the Swahili co-op, which is a farming co-op. And I think it's the newest. It is our newest co-op, emerging co-op. Now, this one, our strategy on transitions to worker ownership is very similar to what Brett expressed with his, I believe was the Fund for Employee Ownership. It's very similar to this, where we have a big business legacy fund, transition program, and acquisition program and cohort, which would involve, again, the businesses that may be going out of business for one reason or another. Let's say the owner is not interested in really shutting down, but wants to pass on the business so that the community can continue to thrive, and so can the employees themselves. And we turn these businesses, we purchase the businesses that then will become worker owner co-ops. And our third strategy is supporting existing co-ops. It's to provide the wraparound support to the culture building itself, the financial literacy, the business analysis and planning, once more through all of the networks that we have. Power in numbers, Black Co-op U happens to be my main responsibility right now. It's very new. We are in our 9th week of a 14-week program. It's a training program. Starts with, in this particular case, 5 different co-ops that I'll introduce to you in another slide. But our Common Future agency is what funded this particular effort. Common Future has provided us with not only the opportunity to help these emerging co-ops just in training, but also in financing. At the end of this 14 weeks, there will be one co-op that will be selected to have a $10,000 award. I think that's pretty cool. But in the meantime, every co-op that participates will get $2,000 just for completing the training and setting up the co-op. So our co-ops include Queen Mother's Market, which is a marketplace for that's to be one of our food deserts. And some of you who may not be familiar with Ohio, but there are a lot of food deserts in Cincinnati alone. About 21 food deserts that were identified just in the city of Cincinnati. And so Queen Mother's Market is for Walnut Hills, which is a very, in fact, one of the Kroger recently left that area, so it indeed is in need of some very healthy food resources for the people there. We have a touch of TLC home care. That home health care involves right now a co-op of women who are in the process of getting qualified for their passport, which would give them access to more public funding for their clients, but it's a growing co-op already working and operating. We have T-Shirts Unlimited, which is a very interesting co-op that's through one of the churches. They already do a lot of T-shirt manufacturing, and they thought that, well, why not share it with our congregation and have them help us out as well. And what they've done is they've decided to turn this into a customized T-shirt operation as well. Body by Baji swimsuit wear. We have a person who has come up with the idea of a swimsuit that can be worn 12 different ways. She's been courted by Shark Tank, and it's a very interesting concept. She's making some turning heads, put it that way, and we think that it's going to be a promising business for her. That's also a worker owner co-op. And Hopes Fulfilled was going to be a market, and they've decided to make it into a food truck, which also will be worker owned. So they're the 5 that are currently going through the Black Co-op U experience. One of the reasons why I wanted to join this co-op as a staff member after I retired in February is because I've been involved with Co-op Cincy, started out at Cincinnati Union Cooperative Initiative, as Flecker mentioned, is because I wanted to also show that beyond my board experience that, you know, I could contribute in some way to helping our economy grow. And that is concentrate on those marginalized communities, concentrate on people of color, make sure that we have access to capital, make sure that, you know, I can help provide some of the education that's needed for them to, as it says here, last beyond, you know, what we consider to be traditional business models. So after 5 years around, 62% of cooperatives are still in business compared to approximately 35% of traditional businesses. And then again, if we look at the stats here, for every $1,000 spent at a local food co-op, $1,604 goes to the local economy, and $239 more than if the same $1,000 was spent in conventional stores, grocery stores. So this is why co-op may be good for you. I know that some of you on the call may be somewhat unfamiliar with co-ops, but this is why we believe co-ops can work for you. I believe in sharing the ownership, the risk and reward. We're part of a team of people that want to bring a business idea to life. We desire to be a part of a community of co-ops that support one another. We value strengthening the community as well. So with that, I will pass it over quickly to Flecker to complete the presentation, and he will talk about Sustainergy, which is one of our most successful co-ops.
Thank you, Cynthia. Excellent, excellent. So yeah, so Sustainergy Cooperative, we've been in business since 2014. We focus a lot, we are working on business and focus a lot in energy efficiency. We do energy audits, target mainly residential buildings. We work with mainly working class people that earn, the household income can be from 35,000 to 90,000. We definitely do people that make more money than that, but that's not who we typically target. And the way we do it, we want to make sure that things that we do actually get, or the assessments that we do actually get performed. That's a very important thing for us to alleviate climate change. And we will, there's a fact right now, like 30% of the energy you use in almost in every building, it's wasted due to very basic things like lack of insulation, airflow, and things like that. LED bulbs, you name them. So we target specifically at these 30%. Typically, a residential building, a basic upgrade can cost you in Cincinnati anywhere from $2,000 to $3,500. The ROI typically depends on the things that they do based on, you know, after the energy bills are impacted and reduced, they get their money back within very good case scenario, 40 years, and okay, 7, 8, 9 years. Still a solid 10 to 15% return per year. You still have the planet, you live comfortably, improve the indoor air quality. So that's the part that we focus on. We go there, do the low hanging fruit. People learn that it's profitable, it's good for the environment, they live better, and then they hire us then for the walls and the other parts of the building. And the other part that we're doing now is smart solar. So as I said earlier, we target working class people, and then being able to buy solar is a huge obstacle for our market. So the way we target it is in first doing the energy efficiency part for $3,000 or something like that. They can reduce or cut the energy bill 15 to 20%. That means that they need 15 to 20% less solar modules, which makes them be able to source solar more effectively, because now they need a smaller solar array. is making it more accessible for working class people. Typically, wealthier folks are the ones that are leading this effort in energy efficiency, at least in Ohio, or in Cincinnati at least, in my experience. So we are focusing with this market. Interesting data, and this is based on the DOE. Every $1,000 spent in energy efficiency, installation, weatherization, you name it, on average, creates a full-time job. And that's actually has been through in Sustainrgy. Every $110,000, we can create a full-time job that certainly we pay more than our competitors, way more than our competitors, for sharing the profits. And we provide health insurance, we provide benefits, and the biggest piece, ownership. And still be able to be competitive. We definitely offer we are not the cheapest option, we are not the most expensive option. We are an option that offers a lot of value to the clients, and they've been hiring us for that reason. But what I'm trying to say with this, there's a huge opportunity for creating jobs in these communities. There's a transition happening right now. People are going from coal to solar. We are dealing with the New Richmond School District, and they have 2 plants that closed, two coal plants, and they're going to lose about $2.1 million per year in the next 5 years. The school system is very stable, but now this is going to destabilize the school system. So we're working with them to reduce the energy bills. And it's going in a very good direction. The last piece of our strategy is definitely the replicability. We're focusing now on being able to replicate sustainability across the country. The first point will be Dayton. We're also talking to other cities to be able to replicate ownership, our model in the places.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Flecker, for that presentation. It was really great. It hit a lot of points that I think we wanted to emphasize in terms of what we're trying to convey here. I just got an email from a representative from the Green Bank, Tom Deo. He said that his power went out, which is easy to believe because we're having a lot of storms move through the system right now. He's not going to be able to present tonight. I think which is fine. I think we're kind of running over time, and I think we'll just have to bring Tom back for a separate presentation. With that said, do we have questions from the audience?
Tim, I think there's a few questions that we could come up with ourselves, but yeah, let's first see if there's anyone in the audience who has them.
Right. Anyone raising their hand? Okay, we got one from the audience. How can we bring these things to Arlington?
Well, I can say in terms of Sustainrgy, if you have a group of folks who wants to get into the energy efficiency industry, give us a call. We can explore how we can help them fund the business and expand the Sustainrgy there.
Yeah, the same thing about Co-op Cincy as well. If you have an interest in co-ops, then you can still reach out to us. We do what's called National Co-op U. So we have co-ops all around the country that we, work with, can help establish.
Yeah, and I'd say, there's a new set of terms coming out around impact equity, right? So we know that there's private equity, and the capital markets function very well around private equity, but we're beginning to see this impact equity be a new asset class. And so, as this asset class emerges, employee ownership is a great way to attract these impact dollars. And the other thing I think would be important would be, who in your community is pulling for, allocation of the infrastructure dollars to grow employee ownership. I know we're focused on that here in Ohio, specifically with the good folks on the Collapsinci. I mean, we're working together right now to be sure that our state legislature understands that there's a demand for dollars for employee ownership, and working to route those dollars, to organizations like ours. And I think the opportunity is to, work with us to understand how to allocate those dollars once you advocate for them.
Okay, so another question we got is, what has been your biggest challenge working with elected officials regarding your areas learning curve for them?
I think the biggest thing for us is just getting the meeting first, but we've met with all of our city council people a few weeks ago, trying to get a part of the, money that the relief funds that came out. We wanted to make a pitch for that, and we did. And we did get, we spoke to all except two, and they were all on board. They loved what we were doing. They were very, very interested in anything that would help or would improve the economy. And it didn't matter, political persuasion. They were all interested, and they ended up supporting us and moving our request forward. Um, so I'm very, very positive about the prospect of getting funding, from them. So it's just a matter of campaigning, being out there, and making the pitch and showing the successes.
Yeah, I think for us in
Yeah,
Buffalo. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I'm listening.
Yeah, I say for us in Buffalo, I mean, we're we kind of lead with our community organizing, expertise and tactics, and I think when we do, we sometimes come into opposition with the power structure in Buffalo, and I think part of the push story, it's I think is about threading the needle of being kind of sensitive to biting the hand that feeds you, so to speak. Not that we draw a ton of resources from the city, but they definitely just enable a lot of our development activity as an affordable housing developer. At the same time, they're the administration that's in office and has been for 4 terms now, going on a 5th term, is driving, as I mentioned at the outset, really kind of threatening and unsustainable development patterns because of the administration's relationship with kind of a small cohort of private real estate developers. So, we've definitely challenged those relationships, and how it's kind of manifesting in the community in a way that risks sacrificing some of the working relationships we have, with other parts of the administration. So, yeah, I don't know. There's no real kind of, I think, strategy aside from just being super sensitive to that, but at the same time not being afraid to to push back and to oppose things that ultimately aren't don't work for folks, marginalized folks in your organizations in the community. So
Hey, Tim, can I say something? I'm already talking now. Well, Clark, yeah, go ahead. Thank you, Clark, for that. And you made mention to developers, and strategy is always important. And I think sharing some of those lessons learned more broadly, so we'll understand people, places like Arlington, what were the hurdles when you were going on, trying to take on some of these initiatives. That goes to Flecker and the entire team. Because even in a progressive city like Arlington, believe it or not, there'll be some some hurdles that we'll have to get around and get over as it relates to not only dealing with elected officials, but also, you know, you have the developers, right, that are here that have a lot of power and influence. So it's good to know, you know, we understand community activism and getting your folks together, but, you know, Tim and Gabrielle, with any lessons learned down the road from, you know, your engagements, you can share with us. I think would be beneficial here in the Northern Virginia region, and more especially in Arlington. So thank you for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it.
Brett, did you want to add something about that? I know you were starting to speak about challenges.
Yeah. So, you know, it's you know, it's a difference between policy and sort of market, and you wrestle with that. And I feel like most of the solutions that we've worked on here at Evergreen have been largely market-based. And so even if it's, you know, I mean, new market tax credits or low-income housing tax credits, those are really market-driven solutions and accesses to capital. And you know, so, but you know, one of the policy areas that we struggle with in Ohio is the certification of employee-owned companies, particularly worker cooperatives, as nonprofit, which, you know, the National Minority Supplier Development Council will not certify nonprofit organizations. And so that, from a policy standpoint, you know, that's where we struggle, and that's where we're currently focusing some of our efforts on. Not, you know, not only just how to direct resources, but really how to create a policy landscape for employee ownership that benefits, you know, the model. And, you know, so it's not only MBE structures for us, but, you know, we'd also like to see the city of Cleveland, and quite frankly, federally, we'd like to see, you know, employee-owned companies receive additional benefit the same way that MBE businesses do. Not maybe not the same point structure, but, you know, there's several structures within federal contracting, whether you're a veteran or disabled veteran or a minority, right? We'd like to see employee ownership be one of those protected classes, because we ultimately believe that employee ownership will rebuild the middle class, right? And so when you talk about constituency, right, what drives politicians is their constituency. And if their constituency is going to be happy, they're going to get reelected. And so how do you benefit the constituency, as I think is the solution to most policy and political related, you know, conversations. But for us, you know, we try not to mingle the two or make them too codependent, right? Mostly market-driven strategies for us, with some policy work for the things that affect us on the fringes. So it's more like lobbying.
This is like those are great points. I was saying those are great points. We experience something similar to often politicians or legislators don't understand co-ops. They don't know what it is. So even though there are more memberships in cooperatives than people in this country, they still don't know. Sometimes they are part of a credit union or a rural cooperative. So putting that into context. And the other part is that they often connect co-ops with charity businesses. They think that they are, you know, it's about doing good and giving people free things or something, some type of notion like that, when really co-ops do good, but mainly co-ops are efficient. When you give people ownership and you listen to their voices and they feel valued, what we see in sustainability in our co-ops, people produce more, people are happier, people give better customer service, and then you make more money. That's why we can pay our workers better wages. So really are speaking to these people from the angle, these are very profitable, efficient business that are localized, are not going anywhere because those workers live in this community. And having that conversation is very, very critical. And often they connect them with like hippie business, like 5, 6 folks that are typically white hippies, and they don't see like they don't know the evergreen models that are a lot larger, or the co-op in the Bronx, the home care associates in the Bronx that has 23,000 workers, 2,300 workers. We were organizing a trip with the vice mayor and also other city council people to take them to Mondragon so they can see the scale, how some businesses can have 40,000 workers or 30,000 workers, and they can see how this can shape communities. we have a lot of the pandemic happened, so we had to cancel the trip. Hopefully, we're gonna do it very soon. But I think that then being able to see the scale how co-ops can be and how that can impact our community will be very beneficial.
If no one else has a question, I'd actually kind of like to put one out there, since both of, or this is, I guess, to Co-op Cincy and to Evergreen. Since you had mentioned that you have you've set up a fund to try to shepherd existing businesses into worker ownership, and I was wondering, obviously we've seen just nationally a lot of headlines about how lots of businesses are folding as a result of the epidemic and the economic crisis, and really the lack of a coherent, rational federal plan to protect those businesses from something that was not their fault, obviously. And so I was wondering, what are you all seeing on the ground there? Are there more opportunities now to try to intervene? I guess that's the question.
For us at Evergreen, it's right. So what the power of worker cooperatives and really the power of employee ownership comes for us when we're solving economic justice specific related issues, it comes in the form of profit sharing. And so in our view, we don't spend time or resources on turning around non-employee owned companies to make them profitable, to make them employee owned, right? There are plenty of businesses that are going concerned, positively cash flowing, that don't have succession plans or exit strategies, right? And so, from a pandemic standpoint, we didn't see our role as saving bad companies, but more saving good companies. And if it was a company that we thought was going to, operate through, so I mean, I guess the short answer from our perspective is that worker cooperatives and employee ownership isn't a silver bullet that makes bad businesses run good. It just makes good businesses run better.
I think that was well put. I would agree. Because there are still considerations, even though businesses may not be in the best shape. We're going to consider that too before purchasing the business. We want to help, but we also want to be realistic as well.
So if you even consider where philanthropy is headed, right? They're headed towards more PRI, MRI structures where, peer grants, unless they're for super vulnerable populations, they're looking to invest in things that actually provide a return, that are successful and self-sustaining. And, that's, that being our experience, we try to create frameworks for economic justice that can provide a return, right? And so, I think that's where we try to focus, and I think that's where the capital is focused, right? So if philanthropy is focused there, if impact investments, philanthropy may be 2 to 3 percent, impact can be up to around somewhere between 6 and 8%. But the notion of sort of this large continuous grant source, I think those are the old operating models, and that if you really want to be developing, community impact or community wealth building models, they have to be sustainable at some point, right? And there has to be some sort of, so philanthropy and impact capital helps you get a runway to get off the ground to being sustainable. But just this notion of continually pumping dollars into things, I think those are now going to be reserved for really at-risk population programs.
I know we even have those serious conversations with the co-ops in our training. So pretty early on, we even look at impact, just does this really make sense? Are you doing this because it's a, viable idea? We have them do the homework. We want to make sure that they can be sustained And as Brett said, it's not the idea that we will continue to support them with, with grants and so forth, but they will be able to go on their own and be profitable in those ways, and they can share in those profits and just grow. We can support them through the process, but not, financially it may not be feasible.
Right. And so, I mean, to piggyback off of that, it really becomes an access to capital conversation. So employee-owned companies often don't have the same access to institutional capital the way, get businesses that have a personal guarantor. Right. And then particularly you start to have cooperatives of, people of color who are economically disadvantaged. The access to capital just becomes even more restrictive, which is why, groups like Co-op Cincy really do play an important role, because they make the fiduciary feel, as a fiduciary, they make the investors feel more comfortable with that investment, that it's actually not going to go down the drain. Again, just adhering to the market-driven principle that, capital follows returns, and, the riskiness of the return determines the return on the capital, but the riskiness of the investment determines the return on capital. But again, just sort of figuring out how do we create sustainable models and then attract capital to those models, and then provide support to reduce risk.
All right, well, thank you. It's been very enlightening. I realize that we're kind of at the end time, but I actually did want to ask one final question, since I don't see anyone else in the chat asking. But I wanted to ask about the role of unions, because I know that they had come up both in Clark's presentation and also obviously with Co-op Cincy, you guys are using unionized cooperatives. So I just wanted to maybe ask just kind of quickly about the ways to get the unions kind of involved in the kind of work that you're doing, Clark, and also for Co-op Cincy, I wanted to ask that one question I think that kind of comes up with people is, with you kind of having a worker-owned cooperative, what is the role and function of a union then if the workers themselves are the owners, what role are the unions playing there and that function, and what are they, is there any kind of role for them in terms of even financing as well? So I hopefully that's not too much of a can of worms, but just wanted to ask that.
Yeah, I could start. So yeah, I think they, on that one project, were good partners. I think they historically in Buffalo, the building trades unions have, reputation for being, really racially discriminatory and, being controlled by, white men by and large. So, I think that has just presented a challenge to our organization and our membership base. And I think that the populations that we're serving through some of our hands-on job training programs. And so back in 2014, kind of recognizing that, and also just like seeing where some of the trend lines were on the kind of commercial development scene, the private sector work that wasn't unionized, and where a lot of the capital was being mobilized to, we ended up creating kind of a community hiring hall model that kind of married, I think, the best of like an idealized version of a trade union hiring hall and some of the flexibility of a temp agency, and kind of putting it in the control of community members in a community-based organization like Push. And we went out and we kind of sold it, the economics of it to developers in Buffalo who were working, developing some of these commercial projects that weren't unionized, and wound up winning some contracts that landed one project. It was a big adaptive reuse project of a former manufacturing facility that was being converted into kind of mixed use apartments and commercial space. We at the peak, we had 24 men of color, half of whom had criminal records, employed in living wage jobs with Push Buffalo benefits packages, doing anything from just general kind of entry-level labor to, light carpentry and more skilled labor to kind of certified lead abatement work in the building. And that we actually caught kind of headline news in the local newspaper. And literally like hours after it broke the news, we got furious calls from the laborers union in Buffalo being like, what the hell are you doing? Like, that's our turf. And when in fact it wasn't, because they weren't investing in any kind of organizing strategy in this private work. But what it did do is it did kind of open up a conversation where, I think it put them on notice. I think showed that we had some power in the space, and that we meant business, and that they weren't serving our community. So that led to conversations, which unfortunately never reached a kind of finish line, but conversations with the labor's local and with the Department of Labor about like a direct entry type program. So kind of leveraging existing labor law that allows for that, for unions to use direct entry to meet their affirmative action requirements. So I think there's ways to do it, but if unions aren't willing to participate, I think the model, and we still, the hiring hall is still a model that we use. It's essentially a social enterprise business model for us now. Like Push serves as the employer of record. We've gone on more recently to set up a crew of 6 solar installers on a City of Buffalo prevailing wage project that saw installation of 19 rooftop solar systems on public schools across the city. It's an 18-month job. We had that crew of 6 making $50 an hour with a benefits package and without any union participation. So yeah, I think unions ideally, like, they should be at the table and like, let's get them there. But I think, maybe it's going to vary by locality, recognizing that kind of sordid history that some of the trades unions have.
Yeah, and in my experience, our workers are with the Steelworkers Union. And so there are a couple of reasons why we chose the union model. The short term is it helps us to retain talent. We can have an awesome healthcare plan that costs us 50% of what you can get in the market. So allow us to stretch our dollars. Also, when you are part of any FLCO union, you can offer free college education for your workers and their relatives through the Ohio Gateway College, so they can get a bachelor's for free. So allow us to also attract and retain talents, as well as some of the benefits, and also a clear process how somebody gets terminated. So it's in the contract, the process we have to follow when someone will get terminated, and it's the same. It's a consistent process. Being a minority, I can tell you that democracy, of course, has its imperfections. So when we are a small group, right now we are a few folks only. So it's easy to know people's stories, but as we grow, often we see people, whoever is in control is gonna take advantage of the system typically, and then the minority will not have a voice. So we see the unions as a way to provide that redundant mechanism to make sure that democracy stays in the workplace, and also provide safety, and making sure, I'm the director, but I don't focus too much in the profitability, sacrificing safety, sacrificing these type of basic needs, and the union will be overseeing me. And good case studies in Mondragon, they had a strike. You had like hundreds of workers striking among themselves because they were being treated unfairly. And typically when you have a business that is in Spain, about 50 people is when the co-op culture gets diluted. In the US, because we're more individualistic, after 10 people is when you start seeing this division. So then they created something called Comité Social, which is a work union. When Mondragon was created, unions were illegal because of Franco in the revolution. So they had to put a different name. And actually, and that's the model we are following. We believe that they have a big piece, and the larger vision is that unions, in my eyes, are the largest and only real power that is left for the working class agenda, for the working class people. So by funding unions, we're allowed to fund the left agenda, the progressive agenda. That's more for the long-term vision.
Great, thank you. Those are both very insightful remarks from both you and Clark. So it does not look like there's any other questions coming out, and we're over time. So if I just, I guess I'll just offer maybe a slight wrap up, which is that to thank everyone who attended tonight and stayed throughout. Big thank to our speakers. I'm sorry, really, we did not do justice to you all by giving you probably enough time to really kind of dig in and really share a lot more with us, because I know that you guys are, this is really just tip of the iceberg in a lot of cases in terms of what you all are doing. I would say in terms of what this means for Arlington, I think right now, I think tonight we got the chance to hear a lot of different models, whether it is a kind of community focused and nonprofit like Push Buffalo that's using social enterprises to do this kind of work of a just transition and providing kind of democratic, community-based employment and improvement, whether it is the kind of slightly more top-down model of the Evergreen cooperatives of working with larger anchor institutions to get started, working with a nonprofit fund to create worker cooperatives, or this kind of bottom-up organization like Co-op Cincy, where you guys are just kind of creating cooperatives kind of one by one based on people's existing kind of equities and talents. All these things I guess we want to just present in this kind of framework of a just transition. Maybe what we're hearing kind of the national level of a Green New Deal. How do we make a transition to a more equitable and sustainable economy that really centers these kind of communities that have been impacted disproportionately by all the things that were mentioned by Karen, not just environmentally, but just economically as well, and putting these communities up front and foregrounding them as we try to create a more democratically centered economy that really does kind of share wealth and assets in the long term. So I think that obviously all these communities are very unique and they have their own challenges, and to the degree we can incorporate these in a place like Arlington, which I think is on the face of very different, but maybe we're also obviously facing many of the same challenges in terms of things like disproportionate impact of environmental and economic crises on our low-income communities here and people of color, forces of gentrification, energy, rent burden, and things like these, that I think, these models at least point to us, the models that were presented tonight point us in a direction, I think, of possible solutions and what we can do if we kind of put our mind to it. So those are kind of my takeaways listening to tonight. Gabrielle, I don't know if you also would like to just share some final thoughts.
No, I think you summed it up really well. Thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you to the speakers. So many different great examples and different things we can learn. And so if anyone on the call is interested in having further conversations specifically about Arlington, feel free to reach out to me or Tim. I'm going to put my email in the chat. But I think we're finished.
Great, thank you. Absolutely, thank you to the speakers once again. You guys are all great, and please continue to do the work, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Okay, well, Tim, I think we can stop recording. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, Gabrielle.
Are we still recording?
Yeah, this stop.
Is it? Oh, stop. There we go. Remember, I always have problems.